Imagine being a sultan, a ruler of one of the world's greatest empires, yet having almost no real power. This was the reality for Mehmed V Reşad, the 34th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. His story is not one of grand conquests or absolute authority, but of a man who presided over the twilight of a 600-year-old dynasty, a figurehead in an age of revolution, war, and collapse. Today, we're diving into the life of the Sultan who watched his empire crumble before his very eyes. Mehmed V Reşad's journey to the throne was anything but ordinary. Born in 1844, he spent a significant portion of his life in gilded captivity. For nearly 30 years, under the rule of his paranoid older brother, Sultan Abdülhamid II, Reşad lived in forced seclusion within the Dolmabahce Palace. He was denied visitors, forbidden from engaging in politics, and was constantly under surveillance. This isolation shaped him into a gentle, well-read, but politically inexperienced man, more interested in Persian literature and poetry than in the complex machinations of statecraft. But in 1908, everything changed. A powerful political movement known as the Young Turks staged a revolution. They were a group of reform-minded officers and intellectuals who were tired of Abdülhamid II's autocratic rule. They forced him to restore the 1876 constitution, effectively ending his absolute monarchy. Abdülhamid tried to regain his power in a counter-coup the following year, but he failed. The Young Turks had had enough. In April 1909 they deposed him, and his secluded younger brother, Mehmed Reşad, was suddenly thrust from the shadows and onto the throne as Sultan Mehmed V. At the age of 64 he was now the sovereign of a constitutional monarchy, but his power was almost entirely symbolic. The real authority lay with the powerful triumvirate of leaders from the Committee of Union and Progress, or KP, the political party of the Young Turks. These men, Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha and Cemal Pasha, were the de facto rulers of the Ottoman Empire. Mehmed V's role was to be the face of the nation, a living symbol of the caliphate, and a dignified figurehead to lend legitimacy to the new government. He performed his ceremonial duties with grace, undertaking tours of the empire's provinces to boost morale and project an image of unity. But behind the scenes he was largely powerless to influence major decisions. The challenges facing the empire were immediate and immense. Just a few years into his reign, the Balkan Wars erupted in 1912. A coalition of Balkan states, Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro, attacked the Ottomans, seeking to drive them out of Europe once and for all. The Ottoman army, disorganized and poorly led, suffered a series of devastating defeats. The result was catastrophic. The empire lost nearly all of its remaining European territories, including historic cities like Thessaloniki and Edirne. It was a humiliating blow that sent shockwaves through Istanbul and further weakened the state. Mehmed V could only watch as the empire his ancestors had built over centuries was dismembered. As if the Balkan Wars weren't bad enough, an even greater storm was gathering on the horizon. In 1914, World War I broke out. The Ottoman leadership, particularly the ambitious Enver Pasha, saw an alliance with Germany and the Central Powers as an opportunity to reclaim lost territories and restore the empire's prestige. Despite some initial hesitation from other ministers, the empire officially entered the war on the side of Germany and Austria-Hungary. As Sultan and Caliph, the spiritual leader of Sunni Muslims worldwide, Mehmed V was called upon to perform a momentous duty. In November 1914, at the Fatih Mosque in Istanbul, he officially declared a jihad or holy war against the Allied powers, Britain, France, and Russia. The Cup hoped this declaration would ignite massive uprisings among the millions of Muslims living under Allied colonial rule in places like India, Egypt, and North Africa. They dreamed of a global Muslim rebellion that would cripple the Allied war effort. However, the call to jihad largely fell on deaf ears. While some pockets of resistance were inspired, the widespread revolt the Ottomans hoped for never materialized. Many Muslim leaders and populations remained loyal to the Allied powers or chose to stay neutral, prioritizing their own local or national interests over a pan-Islamic cause. The grand strategy had failed, and the Ottoman Empire was now locked in a brutal, multi-front war it was ill-prepared to fight. Throughout the war, Mehmed V remained a figure of national unity. He regularly visited troops, attended public ceremonies, and his image was used in propaganda to rally the people. He was the stoic, grandfatherly figure at the head of a nation in crisis. But behind the dignified facade, the empire was enduring unimaginable suffering. The war brought famine, economic collapse, and immense human loss on battlefronts from Gallipoli to Mesopotamia, from the Caucasus to the Sinai Peninsula. Internally, the period was marked by immense social turmoil and the rise of nationalist movements among the empire's diverse ethnic groups. The war years also saw one of the darkest chapters in Ottoman history. The Cup government, driven by a radical Turkish nationalism and citing wartime security concerns, initiated the systematic persecution and deportation of the Armenian population, leading to immense suffering and loss of life. As a constitutional monarch with no real executive power, Mehmed V's ability to intervene in these policies was practically non-existent. He was a prisoner of the political system that had put him on the throne. By 1918, the Ottoman Empire was on the brink of total collapse. The armies were depleted, the economy was in ruins, and the people were exhausted. Mehmed V, who had been in frail health for some time, would not live to see the final outcome. On July 3, 1918, at the age of 73, he died in Istanbul, just 4 months before the armistice that would end World War I and seal the fate of his empire. The war had taken a heavy toll on the aging Sultan, who had reigned through nearly a decade of constant crisis. He was succeeded by his younger half-brother, Mehmed VI Vahdettin, who would have the unfortunate distinction of being the last Ottoman Sultan, presiding over the empire's final dissolution and his own exile. In conclusion, Mehmed V Reshad's reign is a poignant story of a ruler without rule. He ascended to the throne at a moment of profound political change, becoming a ceremonial monarch in an era that demanded strong leadership. He was the Sultan who lost Europe, the Caliph whose call to Jihad went unanswered, and the sovereign who oversaw the beginning of the end for the Ottoman Empire. Though his personal power was limited, his name is forever linked to the cataclysmic events of the Balkan Wars and World War I, events that tore his empire apart and redrew the map of the modern Middle East. He was a man of dignity and culture, caught in the violent currents of history, a symbol of an old world being swept away by the tide of the new. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the final years of the Ottoman Empire. If you found this story fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the pivotal moments and people of history. Let me know in the comments what you think about Mehmed V's reign. Was he simply a victim of circumstance, or could he have done more? I look forward to reading your thoughts. See you in the next video.